Hey, you wild women. Hope you're enjoying the holidays. And if you haven't already started planning for the new year, a lot of us start to get overwhelmed this time of year because of that. There's so much pressure to come up with this perfect plan for the following year for our personal lives and in business that some of us don't even do anything while others put way too much on it. And some have these incredible moonshots that they just don't think they could reach. But it looks good. And they go and they share this plan with their team or with their family. And they know inside it's inauthentic because it is not what they want to do. Then we become overwhelmed trying to achieve this thing. And then we start to self-sabotage. So, question for you. What if the biggest obstacle to your success is staring back at you in the mirror? Actually, the biggest obstacle is always you, no matter what. Most people who are successful in what they do, whether you're a professional athlete, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're raising money, inventing something new, are successful because they failed and they don't get in their own way. They get out of their head and they get to work. So an example for me is as we started to secure bigger sponsors for the Pink Skirt project, I found myself occasionally pulling back on some of the sponsor levels or even adding more to sweeten the deal for some people. And I asked myself, why do I do this? I even caught myself. So the awareness is there. I even caught myself today in that when I had an incredible conversation with a potential sponsor and she told me her budget and our sponsorship levels were 2 to 3x what her budget was. She came highly recommended and she has an incredible product. So when I followed up with her, I found myself saying, well, here are the levels and maybe we can just add a little more. I actually went and deleted that email completely. Before I sent it, I looked at it and I said, just to reiterate our conversation, here are the things that we talked about. Here's the link to the event and to the sponsorship packages. Review and let me know. I do realize that this is a little bit outside of the expected budget. However, I'm sure that there is something we can do to make it win-win. Basically, what I'm saying is I won't go lower than this. And if it doesn't work for you budget-wise, then it's just not a fit. And it's okay. I would rather say yes to the right partner than say yes to somebody who potentially might be, not budgeting for it or nickel and diming it. Not saying that she is, but I just found myself trying to get the win for the sake of it than to find somebody who's a good fit. That is self-sabotage. And I remember those days when I ran my agency. It was the same thing. I would sabotage a lot of the work that we did contractually if clients were trying to say, that's too much. Like our budget per month is 10K a month and you have it at 15. So, what can you add to it to make it a better deal? And it wasn't about adding more. It was actually about just doing great work of which we have yet to prove to them that we can do, but we needed to start. Anyway, I kept sabotaging the success of myself, my team, my company by making everybody busier doing more because the perceived value was there if we did more. And that's not the truth because we know simple scales. We know that the more work that we do, the more mediocre we become across all departments. Tony Robbins' business mastery event I went to, 10 years ago, comes out on stage and he goes, I have a quick way for you to improve your business by 10%. Take 10 departments and improve them all by 1%. I'm like, well, that's easy. Now, if you look at your business in terms of departments, there's different departments, so to speak. There's like your social media, there's your content, there's your newsletter, there's your service offering, there's delivery, if you can improve each department by 1%, you've improved your business by 10%. See, simple scales. So why I did this in adding more was because I actually didn't believe that, it's not that I didn't believe I can do the work well, it's I didn't believe that I was worthy of achieving that revenue goal. I didn't feel worthy of landing that client. I was also a little scared of the work that we had to do. And so I asked myself, could landing a 20K title sponsor for my event really be that hard? Could selling my agency at the right time really work? It turns out it can. So let's talk about self-sabotage and some examples of how I got through it to be able to be successful in my businesses. So self-sabotage is the conscious behaviors and thought patterns that prevent us from achieving our goals and reaching our full potential. These are mostly thought patterns and behaviors. It's not like there's massive permanent roadblocks in our way. No, we create those ourselves. We ruminate, we tell ourselves these stories. We create these roadblocks. So what does it look like? It's fear of failure. We pretty much all have it. Sure, we could lose it all. But there's also the fear of success. Now, for me, with my last agency, we were doing really well, super profitable, but I associated that type of success with being exhausted because remember, last agency, if you know my story, I had both my babies in the same year that I launched it. My boys are Irish twins. So in my mind, success meant grinding 24/7. It meant the only way to actually be profitable in business was to grind. So I actually feared success. And this was subconscious. So with that, as soon as I started leaning towards that finish line of actually that's the success I wanted to achieve in terms of revenue for my business, the profit margins, the closer I got to it, the more I would throw grenades into my life or my business in order to not get there because I worried if I crossed that threshold, I would be super exhausted, sick, and I'd be reliving the experiences of my earlier years. That never happened. Now, sure, there might be like small t trauma tied into that, but also know that I'm in a much better position because I have the experience. Now I know what not to do. I never asked for help. And because of that, I was doing it all and doing everything half-ass. The other thing that causes self-sabotage is the imposter syndrome, where you feel like a fraud. You know, we think we have to have those 10,000 hours to actually be worthy of it. That's not true. So imposter syndrome is kind of like a myth because it's basically everybody goes through it because you have to start somewhere. So it's a myth in the sense that, sure, you could feel like a fraud, but if people are already paying you for your services or your product and people are already seeing benefits from working with you, you're not a fraud at all, unless you are actually a fraud, but you know you're not. So really, it's about believing in yourself. So self-sabotage, and it can get worse too as you become more successful. So be wary of that. There's a lot of people that have comfort zone addictions. You know what I mean? You would rather stay at home on a Friday night with a bag of chips, a bottle of wine, and watch Netflix because that is comfortable. That's predictable. There's no one to tend to. It's you and your wine and your chips and maybe your kids. I don't know. But when you know there's events happening in your city that you should be at for the sake of building your community, for the sake of networking, for the sake of putting yourself out there, yet you choose to stay at home because maybe you're a little bit of an introvert. Maybe you're a little bit shy and you don't want to put yourself out there, but you know that's what you need to do. And these moments too, you probably have a lot of negative self-talk. I do, oh my gosh, all the time. I drive to work without anything playing in my car so that I can talk to myself. People probably just think I'm on a phone call if they see me driving my car or talking to myself, but it actually works. That talk therapy actually works because I let all the bleh and the guck out of my brain when I realize I have so much negative self-talk. It's like everywhere I'm going, I'm talking negatively to myself. The growth that has happened with me this past year, especially, is the awareness of this happening. Before I didn't even know, and now I know. And I'm like, that's ugly. Why would I think that of myself? And also, the more you have this story that you ruminate about, is the worse it is for everybody around you. You're actually doing your family, yourself, your business a disservice by always having these negative self-talks. And no, it's not a survival mechanism. It's actually the thing that is making you sick. So stop doing it. Now, going back to the idea of small t trauma, there are some times and instances in our life, we all have it, where there is childhood programming that is heavily woven into the self-sabotage. These could be early experiences that might not be so great. There could be family dynamics that shaped maybe harmful beliefs too. And sometimes our parents don't know that they're doing it or they did it. But understand that some of these things could be locked back in a very deep, deep memory, and you don't realize that they are the ultimate trigger to your self-sabotage. So childhood programming is a big deal because we need to heal our childhood wounds. That's important in everything that we do in life. So don't sit there on top of your, pedestal or on your throne thinking, I don't have any trauma. We all do. We've all experienced something in our life, big or small, that is affecting how we show up in our life, in our business. Creating awareness around that and doing the work to get through it is the ultimate key to success. The other thing too with self-sabotage is perfectionism. We will only do the thing if it's perfect. We will only run the marathon if we have the perfect shoes and the perfect outfit and all of the gear we need to run that marathon. We will only ever launch our business if the website is perfect, if the checkout system is perfect, if the product's perfect. See, all these things, they're excuses for you not actually doing the thing. Sure, with the marathon, you can buy all the great gear because you think that's what you need to get going. There are people who run marathons barefoot. There are people who run marathons with 20-year-old shoes and 30-year-old t-shirts and fanny packs from the 80s. So these are people who show up and they crush it no matter what. There are people in business that show up without a website, without so much as a business card or a social media account, and they still crush it in business. So we think we need to have all these things perfectly aligned in order to be successful. It's really just perfectionism just showing its ugly face. It's because the big thing about perfectionism too is really it's using those impossible standards that we create to what we think success is, and it indefinitely shields us against vulnerability. Perfectionism shields us against vulnerability. And the last thing about self-sabotage, as I alluded to earlier, is the feeling of unworthiness. So deep-rooted belief that success or that goal is not meant for you. You've never been able to do it before, so why would things be different now? Well, the meaning of being crazy is trying to do this, trying to get different results by doing the same thing over and over again. Like the gym this morning. My trainer said, really upsets me. There's this group of women that comes in every week. They've been coming here for like 9 years, and this is like intense personal training. He gets people on stages. He gets people to lose 30 to 40 pounds in a healthy manner over the course of 3 months, and they get chiseled. These women, he was saying, they keep coming here and not one single body has changed. They show up, but they don't actually do the work outside of the gym because most of the work needs to happen outside of the gym. These are people that probably don't feel worthy of having more energy or knees that don't hurt or more stamina or sleeping better or a six-pack or big biceps. They show up and they're doing the work, but they actually don't feel worthy of it. So the moment that if they decided to do this, to make this switch in their head that they're worthy of all of that is the moment things change. So when my coach told me this, I said to him, it's crazy because all it takes is one thing to change. That's it. Just one thing. For these women, it could have been that they actually are on a macro diet where they understand the food they're consuming is either serving them or killing them. It could mean that they just need to stop drinking their nightly glass of wine, or maybe it's not doing home-baked goods anymore. Like, we know something needs to change if nothing's changing. And a lot of people, they get stuck in that comfort zone. They get stuck feeling it's all about perfectionism. They get stuck feeling like they're not worth it, their unworthiness. See, this is probably showing up for you. You have deep-rooted beliefs that you don't deserve that success. Yeah, this time of year, as we reflect and we put these goals out for the next year, we think, I can achieve this, no problem. And yet we start the work, we realize it's probably harder. It's going to take longer than expected. So what do? We pull back. Instead of going forward, we think, I'm not going to achieve that level of perfection, so I'm just not going to do it. This might sound familiar if you're somebody who just starts and stops things all the time. You had an offer you put out last month and you only got 2 people in it. So instead of trying to market it a different way or market it a little better, you think it's the actual offer that sucks. Do you know that most people, I think it was like I think it was Amy Porterfield or somebody did the same sort of webinar 70 times, 70 times before she started to see the formula that got people to buy. She didn't change anything in the offer. She maybe tweaked a couple of things. It was the messaging. It was the way that she was presenting it that allowed her to achieve that. So she didn't go through any of this. She didn't go through the feeling of failure or imposter syndrome or negative self-talk. She realized it's a damn good thing I'm selling. I just need to figure out how to get the right people and the messaging they need to hear in order to buy. And she figured it out, right? So this is how it shows up in your life. Here are the signs of chronic self-sabotage: procrastination, indecision, right? Are you a terrible decision maker? Self-criticism, we know this. You avoid challenges. Why do you avoid challenges? Because you fear you'll fail. Like when I did 75 hard, the first time, but mostly the second time, I was so hesitant to start because I was so fearful of failing. And I did the math. If I had to start over again, because on day 40 I failed, and I was like, oh, if I start over again, that means that I would fail again because I wouldn't be able to do the 2 workouts while flying to Australia, because you need to do 2 45-minute workouts. One has to be outside. It wasn't going to work for me because Monday, December 9th or 10th doesn't exist in my books. I wouldn't be able to do an outdoor workout because I'm flying across those time zones. So I just didn't restart, right? I knew I was going to fail, but I could have. And I could have just pushed through until the date where we board the airplane, and I would have still crushed another 50 days of 75 hard. The other sign too is sabotaging relationships, destructive behaviors, consistently choosing paths that lead to failure. Well, if you're going to fail anyway, you may as well know how and when you're going to do that. Kind of like death, right? If we knew our last day, would we really want to know? But when it comes to failure, it's like, maybe we'll just do the thing we know we'll fail at so that it's predictable and that I know the outcome of it and it won't upset me. So what happens with the self-sabotage is that it creates these toxic loops, these things that keep just happening over and over again. Those negative belief triggers, the self-doubt that leads to inaction, then the inaction that confirms those negative beliefs. And then the cycle repeats itself and reinforces itself. My spiritual therapist said to me, do you know the difference between a monk and an unhoused person? The difference is that a monk can allow a thought, any thought, to come into their mind and then to just be released on the other side. Whereas people who have these self-sabotaging patterns have these thoughts come in and they allow to just stay there and fester, right? Someone says, oh, well, you're an addict. Whatever that is, you're an addict. So now all of a sudden you tie yourself to this identity, to this label of being an addict, and that becomes who you are. So instead of saying, I'm not an addict or I'm in recovery, you still connect to that being that you're an addict. Very terrible example. Maybe you're somebody who starts a lot of projects and never finishes them. This is me in terms of crafts and arts and stuff like that. Why do I do this? Because I get to the point where I see how much more work is involved. I'm not enjoying the process, so I just quit. Instead of getting it done, I just quit. So then there's inaction. And now I have all these bedazzled gems and special glues and stickers because I was supposed to create these really cool bedazzled boots to wear at the Taylor Swift concert. I never got through it because it ended up being more work than I thought. The perfectionism was there. It wasn't the color that I wanted. It wasn't sticking on the way I wanted. So instead of just completing it, I just let the perfectionism take over. And so I quit. Now, is this something you do in your life? Probably. I don't know. We all do it. So what does this do to us? Creates chronic stress, creates anxiety, creates low self-esteem, depression, physical health problems, and a lot of missed opportunities in life because of self-sabotage. So here are some things that I've done to get better. I'm not saying I'm perfect and I still don't do this. I do, but on a much less severe level, and I'm getting better. The first thing and the biggest thing is that self-awareness. Are you doing the thing, that pattern that is getting you stuck in the way that you're just going to, the outcome is totally expected. I can write it down, kind of like a Hallmark movie. A girl from big city goes to country to visit mom and dad, falls in love with a country boy, quits her job and moves to the country, gets married. Predictable. We know the outcome, but maybe that's your life. You need to escape that loop. So the self-awareness comes in disconnection, literally so cliched stuff, journaling, meditation, time in nature, go for walks, keep your phone at home, talk to yourself in your car like I do. That awareness, you're like, oh, that's the thing I do. How am I going to change myself in order to fix this? Right? Identifying your trigger points. Then there's this idea of like cognitive restructuring, changing those negative thought patterns. Like for me, it's like every time I send a contract, every time I send an email that's a pitch or something exciting, I always look out the window and I put my hands up in the air and I pump and I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to God, Spirit, Source for bringing me the opportunity to be able to do that. I might look silly some days, but every single time I've done that, everything's always worked out. It's such positive energy. So then I change these negative thought patterns into something positive because I'm actually changing my state. Tony Robbins does this at his event. You change your physical state. You stand up, you start dancing. You need that disconnection, that breaking patterns. And then you have to understand that the most successful people in whatever they do, they reframe their failures as learning lessons. It's tough. I know. And sometimes these little lessons in life, we are like, why did I have to go through that? Something's ultimately very terrible. It's because you needed to learn that in order to either teach somebody else or to get through the next thing that is going to be presented in your life. It's the only way to learn is to go through it. Kind of like that song, Going on a Bear Hunt. So you need to build self-compassion is the other thing. You need to be compassionate with your failures, your oopses, those funny moments, the fact that you sent the wrong email to the wrong person. This is life. It happens. The best thing you can do is just own up to your mistake. Say, oops, yep, I did that. My apologies. I will never do that again. Then setting realistic goals, right? As we start to prepare for the new year, we set all these goals. I'm going to lose all that weight. I'm going to rekindle my relationship with my partner. I'm going to turn off my computer at 5 p.m. every night and be with my kids. We set these goals in which are achievable, but we find ourselves defaulting back to old patterns. Kind of like water, it follows the path of least resistance. Our brain wants to go to what's familiar, what's safe. So we end up just doing the same things over and over again. So you have to break that pattern in order to get over the thing that you're trying to escape from. One of which is setting unrealistic goals. If it's a health goal, if it's a business goal, like if your business for the past 3 years has operated at under $1 million in revenue and you put a $5 million goal for this year, you're going to fail unless there's something super unrealistic that I don't know about in business. But for the most part, if you set these unrealistic goals and you know you can't achieve it and you're just setting it for the sake of setting it to share with your people so it looks good, you're setting yourself up for failure. So if it's $1 million, maybe your goal this year is 1.25 million. It is achievable. And then you do the math and you're like, oh, here are the things that I have to do. Or maybe it's increasing profit margins. Maybe it's actually just getting more movement in your day. Whatever the goal is you're trying to achieve, just break it down into smaller chunks. Celebrate the small wins. Like I'm editing my book that I published in 2017 because it's a revised edition that's more up to date. And I forget how many chapters there are, 14 chapters. And it takes quite some time to update the quotes, to update the data, to update the information. And instead of sitting there and saying, well, I'm going to do 2 chapters a day for, a week or so and make a big dent in it. I realized the best goal is to do a chapter a week. I don't have to rush through this process. I don't need to have this done until March. So I have time. Set realistic goals, create accountability systems. So me recording this episode now, because I'm batch recording all these shows before I head on my sabbatical, is my assistant is waiting for me. She is holding me accountable to having certain recordings done this week. So I have to do like 2 now and 2 tomorrow, and I'm going to do it. You know why? Because it's in my calendar. All the systems set up, the show notes are ready to go. I know what I'm talking about. All I got to do for the next couple of days is sit here and record 1 or 2 episodes a day. And then it's batched and it's ready to go for the next couple of weeks. The last thing that's most important to this whole idea of self-sabotage, it's this. You need to own up to yourself. You need to take accountability when you made a mistake or something went wrong and that's on you. You need to stop letting rumination take control of your life. Those stories that you keep telling in your head about whatever, just like release it. Say bye, thank you. You were a lesson learned. You're no longer serving me. Bye. Taking radical responsibility is the only way through it. Stop projecting. Stop making up excuses. Stop blaming it on everybody else. Even this morning, I sat down with my son, and I can't remember what we're talking about. And he had done something wrong. Oh, this is what it was. His teacher had emailed some parents because some of the boys in class were talking about Fortnite and some of the gory scenes in Fortnite. And I guess it was inappropriate for school. So anyway, I like, hey, Noah, come here. I go, the teacher emailed me and he said that you guys are talking about some gory details about Fortnite in class and it's inappropriate. Did you do that? And he said, yes, I did. Well, and then he starts going on about all these things. Oh, he's just over exaggerating and we don't talk that much. And I said, Noah, all you have to do is own up to it. If you did it, stop making excuses as to why you think you were allowed to do it. Just say, yes, I did it. I won't do it again, and own up to it. And he turned to me and he said, you know what? Okay, mama. Because the moment you take radical responsibility, it's almost like the issue is dissolved. It just kind of goes away. If you're the problem, then take responsibility. You also have to break that thought loop. And you have to replace the what if with the what is, right? So this is focus on facts and current reality rather than endless hypotheses. Endless hypotheticals is the word I'm looking for. So don't focus on the what if. It is the what is. It's control the controllables. We are flying to Australia in a few days, and we go from where we live to Vancouver, and we have an hour layover, which generally means you have enough time to deplane, maybe go to the bathroom, get on your next flight. But I always like to get the snacks, fill up the water bottles, do all this stuff. So anyway, I was a little bit frazzled because I'm like, we have an hour. If the flight's delayed, crap can go south. We have to prime ourselves for a 16-hour flight. So I'm like, all of these hypotheticals I'm talking about, but hardly ever, knock on wood, has there been issues in flying, and I fly so much. So I'm like, but what if it just goes smoothly? Why don't we just prepare ourselves for the worst, but think about the best option? Prepare for the worst, but remember that it's not a hypothetical situation. Prepare for the worst, but allow ourselves to tell the story that everything's going to be fine. Because there's nothing you can control if your flight's delayed. There's nothing you can control if there's lost luggage, all this stuff. You know what it's like to travel. We think about worst case scenarios. You need to build self-trust and you need to create processes. So your life is happening now. It's not in this spiral of these thoughts. We're not worried about the future or replaying the stories about stuff that happened in the past. Every moment you spend ruminating is like a moment in jail. It's a moment that you could be living and growing and creating life as opposed to sitting there thinking about how terrible everything is. So today, start with one simple step. Choose one self-sabotaging pattern to change. Challenge it. When you catch yourself in that familiar loop, pause and ask yourself, is this serving me? Is this serving my growth? Then make a choice that you're going to release it. Release it. It's there. You recognize it. The awareness is there. Release it. Remember, you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of this progress. It's the time is now to start this. It's small changes, little incremental changes on a daily basis, not one foul swoop. So here's the homework for you. What is one small action you can take in the next hour or this week to begin breaking free from these patterns? What is the thing? What is the action? I'd love to know. Send me a direct message on Instagram, Renee_Warren. Let's break free of these patterns, ladies. Let's break free and have the most magical year ever. It all starts with your inner peace. It all starts with working on yourself. Until next time, ladies, peace out.